All right. Hey, good afternoon, CITs, as well as any IC members watching this in the future. So what we're doing today, I just want to welcome you and thank you for jumping on with your time. We're going to cover B2B, basically a foundation class, right? It's not really a training. It's more on really the foundations, the basics of what you got to know in order to be successful at B2B sales. The reason we came up with this class is because we realized that there were a lot of IC members and HTC brothers, sisters, family members who wanted to do B2B sales, but might not or did not really have the background or experience or even the business acumen in knowing how to really close one of these deals or do these discovery calls or do lead gen properly, right? So this class today is it's not meant to be like the entire know-all be-all, but it's meant to give you a good enough foundation that you would be able to take this and use it for yourself or with us in the B2B sales division, right? So I'm going to share my screen and a couple slides and we'll kick off. And also today we have the B2B sales division manager, Sean, as well as the sales support manager, Felix, here with me. And we are going to kind of walk you through this journey. So give me 1 second here. Perfect. Okay. And let me know in the chat if you guys can see my screen. So just confirm, because I don't see anyone in the chat right now. Perfect. Okay. So it's like I said, it's a foundation. Okay. What today is not, all right, let's go over what it's not. One, it's definitely not death by PowerPoint. That's the worst thing that can happen is when, you come on like a webinar or whatever, and then just PowerPoint hitting you, right? I want it to be conversational. I want it to be interactive. I want you guys to ask questions, but please, before just asking questions, raise your hand. And I think Jason, if you could help tell me, because I don't look at a chat, you just help tell me when there's a hand up. You can unmute yourself and just tell us, or maybe Felix or Sean can help as well. This is not a UHTC class, right? This is not a replacement for Ultra HTC. You're gonna get a lot of value. You're gonna learn a lot from Ultra HTC, but that is only right now it's in module 2, correct? So we still have a long ways to go. And the B2B division, we don't want to wait till the end of Ultra HTC to find good closers. We need good closers like yesterday. And this is why we have this today as well. And it is not the A to Z of B2B, like I said. It's not the know-all, be-all. It's not everything. We're not going to be able to cover everything you got to know. That takes years of experience, right? And there are people who are way more also qualified to do this, not other than myself, right? So you will learn through your experiences and you'll learn through your own journey. But we want you to have this foundation. Like think of a house, building a building, you get that basic foundation. So at least in the future, when you learn more things, when you go to Ultra HTC class, a lot of this will make more sense to you. Okay, cool. So the 3 main things to cover today, and this is really important. I really need you guys, and this is not a request, but this is a need. I need you guys to have something to write, to take notes on, to memorize, to have somewhere to print out, whatever. We will share a lot of good information as well as the recording, but really you retain the most when you write stuff, right? When you take notes. There's a lot of important things that you got to know to be successful at B2B. And these are the 3 most important things that we'll cover today, okay? So one of it is the B2B sales talk. That's lingo. That's like the jargon. That's like, I will go over some examples and you see what I mean as well. We'll give you guys some role play examples as well as some statements that you could use. And you will see why it's so important to have that business acumen. Really, that first point is business acumen, right? The difference between a B2C closer and a B2B closer is that a B2B closer has a specific set of jargon, lingo, basically vocabulary, right? That they have to use in terms to sound more professional, to have that business acumen, right? B2C is a lot more personable. It's a lot more one-on-one, right? It's a lot more, I can talk about your emotions a lot more. It's more it should be more casual. It should be more colloquial, right? B2B is definitely different. The second thing is then the posturing, the framing, the confidence. Something that we found, which is what Felix brought up recently, which is very, very important, is he's noticed, and we've noticed that some people, they know what to say, they know what questions to ask, but they don't have that proper frame, that proper, confidence on a call, even on either a discovery call or a closing call, that business owners and executives and directors, they just shrug them off because they don't respect them, right? They don't have that, your tonality is off, your framing is off, you speak too fast, you speak too slow, you don't answer the questions the way the executive expect you to answer it, he or she thinks you're beating around the bush when you're not. It's like these kind of things that really make or break a deal, right? And then crucial B2B questions to ask. So these are the things that when you ask these questions, right, it will lead you to a higher chance of success, getting an appointment, getting a sale. These are things that you almost never want to not ask. They have to be asked, really. So this is like, think of it like a framework or a cheat sheet, if you will, to help you in your B2B journey. Okay. And then by the end of this class today, right, you're going to be able to ask a lot of questions, have your questions answered, and then you will know, right, is this for me? Or maybe it's not for me, right? And this will help you also clarify what you want to do, where you want to go in your journey as well. Okay. So I'm going to preface this by also saying before we jump right into it, my experience, my B2B sales experience comes primarily from obviously the Danlog organization. I've closed multiple HTI deals. I've set multiple HTI appointments, as well as doing JV partnership, sponsorship deal closing, things like that for Sifu. And then the other experience that I have is with a group of friends. I would say maybe like JV partners I had in the past. We kind of had like a digital marketing agency thing where we did a lot of cold outreach. So people don't even know who we are, right? It's like Danlog's Sifu's brand is huge, but this is like people who don't even know who we are. So that's where my experience comes from. And then maybe Sean and Felix, if you guys want to share a bit about yourself as well before we jump right into it.
Sure, I can start. So I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I also founded a publicly traded voice over IP company. The largest deal that I closed B2B was 7 figures. So have quite a bit of experience, also a lot of experience with both cold outreach and reaching out to referrals. Done everything, mostly in the IT sector, but also in the telecommunications sector. And I've worked with various different levels of, right from CEOs all the way down to the people at the bottom of the totem pole. So doesn't matter where in an organization, I've been there, done that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sean. Felix?
All right. So I have worked in kind of the tech industry for about 4 years in a startup. So I have to kind of wear multiple hats. So one of my main role was a product manager, and I have to work closely with sales together to close deals with them together. So that's something that I do for a good few years. And recently I've, working with Sean closely on the B2B side, and I'm doing a little bit of prospecting myself. Haven't closed any deals yet, but definitely working towards that. And one thing that definitely helps me a lot doing this is kind of get really comfortable speaking business language with business owners. So that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Felix. Yeah, well, it's like what Felix ended that note on, right? It's like the business language, the business acumen. That's really important. So that's the first thing we're going to cover today. It's funny. It's going to be, you're going to see sort of like, it's like almost like we're going through like what do you call that? Like a dictionary definitions class, right? Like, oh, this is the word, this is what it means, here's how you can use it. It's almost like an English 101 class, but the importance of it is having it almost in muscle memory, where you can recall these terms, right, naturally, and you don't sound forced doing it, because that also affects your posture in the call, right? If the prospect can feel like you are not natural at it, they might say, you know what, this person might be a greenie, it might be a noob, right? Like he or she might just be very new to this, right? And that could go against you, right? So you do want to sound as natural and as professional as you can, very naturally. And then throughout this section, we're also going to give you some examples of things that we have said in real life scenarios using these terms, okay? It's not going to be a dictionary. Don't expect it to be A to Z of all the terms in the world, right? It will take us like forever. But it's the things that we found that would probably be the most helpful, the most useful for now. All right, so let's get right into it. Cool, very nice. Okay, so, and by the way, some of these terms, some of you guys might know these already. So just bear in mind, right? We created this for all people to all level. If you have had B2B experience, you might be like, oh, these are just basic. I know these. Great. It's great that you know, right? But a lot of people, some people might not. And so we're going to go through them and then talk about them a little bit. So BANT is what it is. It is what it says, right? It's budget, authority, needs, and timeline. So this is not something I for me personally, and then Sean, Felix, feel free to unmute anytime. I don't necessarily say this on a sales call, but when I'm talking to my team, when I'm talking to my, like in the past, I used to work with my partners, we always talk about the band, right? What is the client's budget? Who is the authority in that? Who's the decision maker in that company, right? What are their needs? And what's the timeline for the decision-making process, right? So I want to know that. And then, for example, because in HTI and as well as closes.com, because I used to close as well as the all the different business accounts. I used to close all the influencers for Sifu, right, with Desmond, who want to use our closer. So I would ask them, well, Mr. Prospect, what is your band like? What's your budget like? Who's the decision maker in your company, right? What are your needs for closers? And when can you expect to make a decision regarding hiring closers? Right, so that's where the band comes in from, okay? Now, next one, tofu. I saw some of you guys said tofu, bofu, right? Tofu, bofu, top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Especially important in my experience when speaking to digital marketing agencies or anyone who's related to sales, closing, lead gen, you got to know your terms, right? It's like if the client says, I've got a lot of top of funnel issues, and you're like, what? I don't know, like you try to Google that, that's just bad, right? So this is why I put these terms here, because I find that these are very commonplace, especially nowadays with a lot of digital marketing agencies, SaaS companies, right? We're just talking about the different types of lead flow, right? So top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So here's what it really means, right? So top of the funnel are leads. Like you think of a funnel shape is like this, right? It's very simple. Top is right here. It's wide. So these are the leads who have just sort of entered qualification phase. May or may not be fully qualified. They're top of your funnel. They haven't been filtered down through your funnel yet, right? So you would call this, in B2C, I would call it cold leads, warm leads. I wouldn't call them hot leads, right? That's kind of what top of the funnel is like, that area. Now, bottom of the funnel, that's people who are, this is way past hot leads. These are people, it's the bottom of the funnel, they're close to already entering your ecosystem, meaning they're close to the purchasing decision, right? These are guys who have entered through the final demo call. They've entered through, first of all, discovery call, demo call, quote, invoice, and now about to sign a contract. That's bottom of the funnel guys, right? Not exactly clients yet, but they're really damn close to being a client, okay? Does it make sense, guys? Sean, Felix, anything to add to that?
These are definitely important things to know. And one thing I want to add to this is just, don't go throwing around these terms just because, you heard about it and you think you know about it. Like you definitely got to be a student of these terms. And if you don't want to know a little more detail, don't be afraid to Google them, find out a little bit more about them, like truly understand this so that way when you do put this, because if you do put out a term like this and someone comes back at you and feels that you know about the subject and then you don't know about it, it's going to put you in an awkward position. So
yep, exactly. That's a great point. Don't go out after today and be like, hey, what's your bottom of the funnel like? What's your band like? What's your, this is no, right? It's to help you whenever business owners talk about these terms. At least it gives you the general understanding, right? Because they're not going to say, they might not say, my pre-qualified leads, right? They might say leads at the top of the funnel. You know what pre-qualified leads mean, but now today you would know, okay, that's very much the same thing as top of the funnel leads, right? Felix, do you have something to that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you want to kind of match the language that they speak, right? Like you don't want to bring up these terms if it could potentially, they don't know these terms neither. Like what would be the top of the funnel? So match the language. It could be a young entrepreneur. They probably don't know what any of these terms means, but if you say budget, authority, or needs, it might sound easier to understand than a band, right? Or sometimes you might be speaking with third world countries and where they don't have English as their first language. These top of the funnel terms, they might have a different way of speaking in their language and they won't understand these terms either. So just be really careful about using these terms unless I don't bring it up until they bring it up. So
that's the key for sure. You don't want to, like, the one thing that turns off a lot of, in my experience, business owners is when you jump on a call pretending to be super smart, or not pretending. I mean, you are just very good in these terms, but it can turn some people off because you're just throwing out these terms, and they feel like to a point where you're disconnected, right? You're like on a different level. You're like a different world. You're speaking like alien language, right? So you have to also, that's what I'm saying, use this with common sense, right? the mirror languaging is important. Definitely mirror your prospect's languaging. And like Felix said, it's better sometimes to wait for them to say it first, then you reflect. You deflect back, right? Using the same languaging. But it's important for you to know what they mean, because you don't want to be caught with it like, I don't know what the hell this means, right? And that's the part where we don't want that to happen. That's the purpose of this. Okay, so buying signals, you know, I think we learned this in class. Buying signals, even in HTC, we talk about it. These are just things, actions, words, you know, yeah, really actions, things that they say that they do, that a prospect does that might be showing you a buying signal, right? In a closing call example, right? I might ask so let's say, so for today, for example, it's gonna be an influencer, business owner who wants to hire closers. Okay, so when I give examples, just use that as the context, right? I'm talking to a business owner who wants to hire our closers, okay, our HTC closers. So he or she might ask me, you know, are your closers really good at telling buying signals, right? And I've had that question come up before, and I go, okay, yeah, Mr. Prospect, yeah. Just so I'm clear, what kind of buying signals are you talking about? Because there's a lot of buying signals, right? There's opening an email, there's clicking on an ad. Like, let's make sure we're on the same page. Let's define what you mean. So that's what you might want to talk about there as well. Next one is deal flow. So this is a term where I would say in the B2C world, I would relate this more like lead flow. I guess some people call it lead flow, or number of leads, or how many leads are you getting, right? It's basically the rate at which your team or you as a sales rep are obtaining new opportunities, new sales opportunities. That's your deal flow, right? The deal flow in your pipeline. A decision maker is important as well. That's who is making the decisions in that company. Could be also a stakeholder. Another term you will hear, sometimes instead of using decision maker, they use the word stakeholder. Sometimes they don't even say any of that. They might just say my COO, right? My CFO, my CEO, my John's the other guy that's got to be on this call, right? Sometimes they might be very casual like that, because you might ask them, so, you know, Mr. Prospect, what is your decision-making process like in your company, and who are the stakeholders involved? And they might be like, oh no, it's just John, me and John. And then you might have to ask, well, who's John? Oh, John's my CFO. Oh, got it. Okay, understood. Right? Like, it's that kind of conversation. CR, conversion rate. I think we know these as closers. It's a conversion rate. What percentage of leads are closed? These ones are a bit as well, I would say they're important. And I'm coming to you with a lens of, again, sales, MQL versus SQL. If you went through HubSpot, you're probably very familiar with this as well. You have to know the difference between marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. I've had a lot of business owners, when they were trying to hire closers, they did ask a lot about MQS and SQL, because they wanted to know, you know, what our closers did, right? We wanted to also clarify then that we did not, our closers are not your marketing reps, right? They're not going to help you send up content. They're not going to help you, you know, persuade or like help you add those, you know, basically add content and do marketing for you. They're there to close sales qualified leads, right? So a marketing qualified lead is a lead that, for example, might have downloaded a white paper, downloaded a PDF from your website, entered a lead magnet, right? Put in their email. That is a marketing qualified lead, right? But they haven't been qualified yet to really say that they are ready to buy, or even close to the stage of being ready to buy, right? So they're just marketing qualified. So usually what happens, if you didn't know this, marketing qualified leads, a really good organization would have a marketing strategy that would target the marketing qualified leads over time. You probably are part of that too. If you subscribe to different businesses, they send you email letters, they send you newsletters, they send you emails, they send you physical letters. You're basically a marketing qualified lead to them. Doesn't matter what you, IKEA, Costco, whatever, right? Like you know, any other influencer website, the stuff they send to you direct mail, you're basically a marketing qualified lead to them. That's what you are. That's what we are, right? And we become a sales qualified lead when we pick up the phone and we call their helpline and be like, hey, you know, I saw that couch. Do you guys still have it in stock? Right? Well, then now you have become a sales qualified lead, right? Now it depends, right? It depends on the business. You call them, you know, book a call, right? We know the book a call funnel. You book a call, speak to one of my representatives today who can help you out. You book a call, and then it might be a closing call. So that's when you become a sales qualified lead, right? Based on your activity. Felix, Sean, you guys are good?
Just seeing here in the chat here, you guys are talking about white paper. A white
Oh, yeah,
paper
you define that.
is like an ebook in B2C. So
Yep.
white paper is a paper written on a particular business topic, normally again with a sales intended focus, to be able to give person information about a particular product or service, how it would benefit their business, what the sometimes it has some case studies in it from people that have used the product or service. So a little bit different than an ebook on the B2C side, but that's what a white paper is.
Exactly. We should add, make sure you write that down as well. I should have added that to my slide. Yeah, but like Sean said, it's really much like a lead magnet, like an ebook on the B2C side. They just say white paper because in B2B, it's actually what it was in the past. Back in the old days, they actually sent out those papers, right, to their MQLs, right? They direct mail those, so that's why it's white paper. Then the next one, NSAs, non-sales related activities. So just think about it, right? You're a closer, right? When you do prospecting, when you follow up emails, when you do calls, when you do CRM stuff, those are all sales related activities. It's the things like when you go and fill out your commission report, when you go and talk to your manager, when you go and talk to the product manager team, like Felix's team, then that's not really a sales related activity, right? That's an NSA, right?
One thing I want to add on to the MQL and SQL a little bit. I had a little bit experience myself when I was working in a startup environment where the product team that I have also work closely with marketing. So just want to clarify a little bit because different companies treat MQL's definition differently, right? They might think enrolling in an email sequence is an MQL. Some company like the one that I work with, they see they need to do multiple actions they become MQLs. So they might need to download PDF, they might need to subscribe to the email and talk to someone before they become an MQL. So just want to make sure that you guys are not assuming, subscribing email directly equals to MQL. It varies, depends on the company. So when you guys are talking to business owners, you don't want to make that assumption. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely clarify that. The other term I would add, if you can write it down, is lead score. Usually companies determine the MQLs based on the lead score. Like Felix said in his organization, right? If a lead comes in, if a lead comes in, maybe they only click on an email or they only reply to an email. That score is not enough to become an MQL. Then that's not an MQL, right? So like Felix is saying, the company might calculate the number of scores, things they do, the actions they do. Click on an email, download an ebook, right? Click on an ad, comment it somewhere, right? On a blog post. Then those scores add up. Then they might become an MQL. So exactly right with what Felix is saying there. Okay, these ones are much more important because when I found these very important when it comes to talking to business owners about revenue, money. I think one of my mistakes, the biggest mistakes I have made on B2B when I first started was well, first of all, I didn't really know the difference between the types of revenue. There's a lot of type of revenue, right? Like that's front end, back end, deferred, total, collected, annualized. That's all kinds of different terms. I'm not saying today go learn all the accounting terms or the financial terms, but I will tell you this: a lot of different business owners, they can use very different terms and very conflicting terms to actually define the same thing. Like I talked to one business owner. He said, my annual revenue, right, was X. Okay, and then that to him, okay, let's say my annual revenue last year was 10 mil. Okay, then to me, that means you made last year, calendar year. By the way, we're gonna talk about fiscal year and calendar year as well. For me, it means in my head, last calendar year, your company did $10 million, right, front end in revenue, or front and back and everything in revenue, all right. But then someone else might say, the revenue last year was 10 mil, right, or something like that. Or sometimes I've heard the term cash flow, right, and sometimes it'll be very direct, right. If you ask them about profits, they actually know what it is. But it's important to know the difference between all these terms. So like, if you talk to a SaaS company or you talk to a company that does a lot of subscriptions, they might not even say revenue. They might just talk about annual contract values all day long. For example, Grant Cardone University, his team, when I talk to them, they only talk about ACVs. annual contract value. They don't even talk to me about revenue. When I ask them, what's your revenue last year? They go, do you mean our annual contract values? I go, oh, okay, yes. Because they're talking about what is each account's contract value worth that year, right? And then they add it up. So annual contract value per account, right? But then when they understand what I'm saying, then they, oh, okay, got it. So you just mean the bulk of it, or the total. Okay, yeah, that's what I mean by the revenue. Got it. Okay. Monthly recurring revenue is how much monthly recurring subscriptions are. So for example, like I think the perfect example is IC in a circle. If you're paying $250 a month, then that's $250 a month recurring revenue, right? From that one client. That's monthly recurring. It goes on and on. The ARPA is the average MRR per account. So if we had HTC, right, the HTC brand, that's the ARPA there. We have HIC, that's the other MRR there, right? It's two different divisions, right? Okay, we're good. And then the annual recurring revenue again. So again, right? Sometimes they might say, "Hey, my company's annual recurring revenue." That should give you a hint that the company might be doing more subscription-based type products or services. Then I might ask them. So just to clarify, Mr. Prospect, Mr. Business Owner, what you're selling is an annual subscription, correct? They go, oh yeah, that's right. Then I say, oh, okay, got it, right? Because an annual recurring revenue is different from annual revenue in that recurring, it's something that expect to come year after year after year after year. So it's these kind of things, right, to be aware of. Sean and Felix, anything you want to add to this?
So these terms, the biggest importance of these is this is normally what is really important to your business owner when you're talking to them. So this is one you need to pay a lot of attention as to what is, and ask the right questions to find out which one or all of these things are important to them, depending on their business model, their revenue model. So this is the place where you're going to, doing a lot of B2B sales, you're going to be asking a lot of questions, and you need to make sure it's about what is important to your prospect, not necessarily what's important to you. So make sure you spend the proper time and ask the proper questions about these particular points.
My biggest mistake, to finish off what I was saying earlier, was that I only used the term revenue when I first started. And that really messed me up. Because when I was talking to like SaaS owners, they could tell I didn't know what the fuck, they could tell I didn't know what I was doing, because I just said revenue. And when they said recurring revenue, when they said annual contract value, I was like, well, I don't know what that is. I had to go Google it, right? So it's things like this where, like Sean said, you've got to really got to know what they say and what it means. And if you don't know, you can clarify. So when you say annual recurring revenue, I just want to clarify, you're tying that to your service-based subscription product, right? I mean, service-based subscription, correct? That's what you mean. But then annual revenue so your annual recurring revenue is 5 mil, but your annual revenue is 10 mil. Am I correct? So that means 5 mil came from your software service, your SaaS. Got it. Okay, that makes sense, right? It's those kinds of conversation that you have to have. All right. Anything else? Any questions in the chat?
There's a question. Let's see. ACV, MRR, ARR are one of a predictable revenue. Am I right?
Now, see, this is where I want to clarify terms. Shang, when you say predictable, what do you mean? Are you saying more of a forecast? Are you talking about forecast, like a prediction of revenue? Or are you talking about like the actual collected revenue? We also got to be, on the same page with the terms, right? You can unmute yourself, by the way, Shang, if it's faster.
When we talk about predictable revenues, meaning, for example, right now we have 1,000 IC member, and we particularly gonna be stable or accelerate through all the season, like say 100 member every single season. So it kind of predictable revenue, so we can plan out the cash flow when we budgeting out for any other project.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so this technically is not for predictions. These are actual numbers. So it's like if we got 1,000, that's 1,000 times 250. That's what is it? 250? No, that's 250K. 2.5, sorry, 2.5 mil, right? 2.5 mil. That's the actual MRR. But you could say predictability wise, if we expect that performance in the next couple of months, we're going to bring in 100 students every month. I can predict an MRR of 250K a month. Does it make sense? I can predict, like I can tell my finance team, I will predict that we can bring in 250K in MRR, but that's still the actual, right? Actual collected. Does that answer your question? Yes. Oh, it makes sense. Okay, good. Yep. The next one is customer acquisition cost. So this one is pretty big, especially when it comes to digital marketing agencies, because we always talk about how much does it cost you to generate a client, right? They might use the term my customer acquisition cost or my CAC, my CAC. And if you know that, I'll give you a very simple example of how to calculate that. It's basically how much you spend to generate the customer, whatever salary and commissions that the company is paying. So let's say I'm a digital marketing agency, right? I'll give you the example in the bottom there. I spent, this is a 30-day period, by the way. This is a month. Last month, I spent $10,000 in ad spend, Facebook ads, whatever, YouTube ads, Google ads, okay? I paid my sales guys 15K in commissions, okay? And then I spent 8K in my office, rent, lighting, utilities, all that. I'm just gonna put all my fixed and variable costs there, right? So you add it up, it's 33K. And I generated 100 customers that month, 100 paying customers. So you do the math, 33K divided by 100, that means my customer acquisition cost is $330 per customer. Same thing as a lead acquisition cost too. If they talk about what's your lead acquisition cost, you just change the new customers to leads. How many leads you generated, then you just change the new customers to new leads, right? Then you get your lead cost too, cost per lead, CPL. Sometimes they'll call it, right? If you're a digital marketer, CPL. That's one way to calculate it as well. All right, cool. Felix, Sean, you guys are good on this?
I'm curious to ask these questions for everyone, just to have a little bit of interaction. Why is it important for us to know what the revenue is, what is their cost? It's like what could that tell you? Why is it a good thing to talk about?
Oh well, so Jerry here. So you really want to be able to know how profitable they are as a business, because I mean they could have 10 million in revenue, but if their acquisition cost is high, then it really doesn't make sense. It means that their margins are probably very low. So you're able to gauge what their profitability is.
That's good. That's a good answer. Any more? That's a lot of reasons. Yeah. Anyone else? Profit margin.
One more thing in the hi, this is Shang, and one more thing in the formula, the overhead costs always stay the same. The salary probably gonna stay the same when we're offering, for example, Closer.com. The only thing that they're gonna spend on is more commission and more bonus, meaning so the profit is gonna get higher and the margin gonna get higher. So when we talk about these numbers, we can bring it up to so the business owner can have a better idea of using Closer.com. How is that going to affect for the profits of the current business?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So like, yeah, to add on to that, it's like if we're let's say we're at Close.com, we're doing a deal there. If we're hiring closers, I could say to the prospect, hey, Mr. Prospect, if we could reduce your customer acquisition cost by 20%, right? What would that do for your business? And what I mean by that is we have, lower, more customers close with lower commission. There, perfect. Okay, great. All right, so exactly, Shang, you're right. Did anyone else have someone's going to speak up?
Just to add to that before you finish on that point, the other reason the customer acquisition costs, especially say if they're looking at hiring closers, is if they want to get a bunch of closers on board, they also have to have the budget to be able to do that. So understanding the acquisition costs, and then you can relate that to what budget they're willing to spend on having the closers come in, it does all factor into each other as well.
Great.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Who's talking?
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, Chris, go ahead.
Last thing is, for me, is one thing I actually use to hear a lot and also discuss a lot with a lot of the influencers I spoke with was, and other business owners as well, is to determine how serious they are, okay, it's good to know how much are they willing to spend, right, in ad revenue, Facebook, or all sorts of different methods as well, right? And sometimes they're willing to pay high commissions, but say low ad spend, or maybe even reverse, so you get an even clearer idea much earlier on, just what kind of business model they're using, how they're acquiring leads, and just how serious they are.
Yep. Good.
for different projects.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Chris.
I'm gonna add on to my point of view for that part real quick, is that talking about profit, there are two things that I found is very useful. One is, what is their buying power, which everybody talks about. Like, can you get a rough estimate whether they can afford what you're selling? Second is, when you can relate your product advantage to, like what Joel said, reduce their costs or maybe increase their profit, that would be a good topic that you can relate to. That's why these conversations are so important, because you can relate that to things directly to them. And businesses love talking about these two things all the time. If you can have a really good mathematical mind and do those quick math, right, and talk about these, you are in a much, much better place.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Okay, the next term that is very important when you're talking to business owners is when you talk about their customer lifetime value, CLTV. This one you can calculate it. I just gave you guys the kind of the formula there. And by the way, all these things you can also find on Google, right? If you ever forget it or you miss it, just Google it. They're sure what it's done. But basically, this tells the business owner how much a customer is worth in whatever the customer's lifespan is. So an example that I can share is like with let's say with DO, last time we had DOD, right? Dan on Demand. Oh, that's not a good example. Let's talk about Danlock Shop. Danlock Shop. Say, we got this person A. He or she buys stuff from Danlock Shop. Let's say he or she spends about $50, right? $50 a month. Okay. And we find out from, let's say, January 2019 all the way to July 2020, that's about 18 months. They bought about $50 every time they order something. Right, over about 18 months, and then after July they stop buying, right? Which means after that, and we noticed that for a couple months later they stop buying. So if we look at that and we look at that trend, and most customers are like that, then we can say that our average customer lifespan is about 18 months. So people usually buy with us for 18 months and then they stop, they do something else, and then we can tell that they buy maybe once a month, right? Times $50. So then the customer lifetime value is really $50, right? $50 in that 18-month period. That's a very simple calculation there. Cross-selling is very important, because when you talk to business owners, sometimes you talk about a specific product or service they have, but they will you can ask them, if our solution allowed you to cross-sell, right? Which basically means different verticals. Let's say, I don't know, I'm a digital marketing agency and I provide Facebook ads as my lead gen. Right, that's my main. I'm a digital marketing agency, and that's my main service I'm offering. We do Facebook ads, but I might have a different vertical under the same umbrella, under the same company, and we're providing credit repair. Right, very different things. Right, but I'm credit repair, but I'm doing Facebook ads. Okay, and I might just tell, if I'm whoever I'm talking to a person, it's like, yeah, we can also, first of all, to get more fun for you to run Facebook ads, you might want to invest in credit repair. We can take off those negative points from your credit score, right? Get you a better credit score. You can get more financing. You can spend more on your Facebook ads. That's cross-selling. So if I was closing so if you're closing for that company, that's what you would do, right? You would close on the credit repair, you close on the Facebook ads. That's how you cross-sell. Close.com, covers.com, Dragon 100, HTI, all cross-sells, right? You want to come and learn, you want to hire closers, but you might want to you might want to have an advisory board with Danlock. Great. You want to learn how to set up a premium offer, right? Take a 12-week program, HTI. A lot of cross-sells. And that's actually what the B2B division, like Sean and Felix's team, they cross-sell a lot. Danlock Consulting, HTI, Dragon 100, sometimes even HTC, right? HIC. So it's like, yeah, it's that. So fiscal year, this is really important. The reason I put this here is because not all companies, the fiscal year is always the same, right? You would don't assume that it's always January to December, right? This is really key. I didn't know this when I first started. I just thought everyone is like this, right? It's like, no, everyone's fiscal year is different. You want to clarify that. Mr. Prospect, just so we're on the same page, when I ask you for your last year revenue, are you telling me, was it your calendar year or was it your fiscal year? And what's your fiscal year? Is it September to September, right? I mean, September to October, or is it October to September, or is it January to December? It's different, right? It's something you want to clarify all the time. Sean, Felix, good? Okay, good. Awesome.
Good.
Okay, ICP. I think this one we learned. I don't know where we learned this, and I don't know. This is probably not. But ICP is like if I'm talking to like hiring closers, right? The business owner, I might go, okay, so we've got these closers, and we want to know what kind of ICP, so ideal customer profiles, your company mainly gets or mainly targets. What I mean by that is exactly what I just said, right? What that business owner I'm talking to, his target audience, what is his ideal type? Their demographics, right? Their age, maybe males, 18 to 35, located in North America. And so demographic is what the features are, like the person's features, like age, age, gender, that's demographics, right? Geographic is location. Psychographic is attitudes, buying behaviors, right? Things that they do, activities that they do, right? So it could be male, 18 to 35, located in Iowa in the United States. This is think about like the Facebook targeting. If you guys know Facebook targeting, it's like then you can select activities, right? And target it based on people who gamble at least once a month. People who, I don't know, like that's what psychographics are, right? Pretty much. And then you want to know what their ICPs are. KPI, I think you've heard of this one as well. It's common in many industries, in many different settings. It's basically what are your measures of success within your company, right? For that specific task or that specific role. So I might ask the business owner, Mr. Business Owner, what is a key KPI that you expect from one of our closers? And he might tell me, surprisingly, actually, Joel, it's not the conversion rate. I actually care more about their follow-up time or the time it takes for them to reach out to a prospect. And I go, oh, that's an indicator. That's a performance indicator that you measure, right? That you hold highly in regard. They go, yeah, I care about the time it takes to follow up with a client more than a conversion rate. But a conversion rate is a KPI as well, right? Do I see question? I think Sean and Felix, you're going to help me answer the questions. Oops.
Yeah. Well, just before I answer Henry's question there, the ideal customer profile, the other thing you'll hear it said is called an avatar. So if you hear the term avatar, they're talking about the same thing. Henry, as far as an OKR, is it also a common term? In certain circles, it is. In certain circles, it's not. KPI is the more prevalent one, but you're seeing OKRs coming out more. For those that don't know what an OKR, it's an objective and key results. It was bigger in tech sectors to begin with, but it's now become part of a much broader range of companies. It originally started back with companies like Google and Intel, but it's spread to be a much broader base. Even Bill Gates uses it for his not-for-profit foundation. So it has a lot of broad uses.
Yep. We used to use KPIs in Team Danlock, and now we are all with OKR. So if you want to read a book, it's the OKR book by John Doerr, Dooer. Yeah, that's a good book. And the last one, I think margins. I think some of you guys said in the chat just now, margins. It's basically profitability. How much of the revenue, right, could be profit? What's their loss? What's the margin between their loss and their profits, and what's break even? It's how much they make, how much they take home, right, at the end of the day. Cool. All right, these ones are, I would say they're pretty important too. Month over month, week over week, or quarter over quarter. I could say my month over month revenue, my week over week revenue, right? My quarter over quarter revenue. So that's week to week, month over month, right? You kind of average it out. Then that's what you get. And then Net Promoter Score, that's something you are very familiar with in terms, you might be familiar with if you come from like corporations that do a lot of good client success, customer service, customer satisfaction type surveys, right? It's 0 out of 10. How likely are you to recommend your business to others? I'm sure most of us have seen it with the Danlock support team. They used to send out the emails on the bottom. You would select 0 to 10, right? How likely are you to recommend Danlock to others? You guys have seen that email? Yes? No? Yeah, that's a Net Promoter Score. So just to share, our organization's score is pretty high, and we're very proud of it. We're like a 9, right? 9 out of 10. That's a very high average, so that's great. So something that if you talk to a business owner, you might ask them, right? How do you guys measure, your client satisfaction? How do you ensure that your clients are happy? And they might say, oh, we got a net promoter score system. Then that should tell you, got it. So they're using this average, right? Then I might ask them, okay, don't mind me asking, right, Mr. Business Owner, what's the current average right now? It's a 7, and you said you like to get it to a 9, correct? Okay, got it. So Mr. Prospect, if our closers could help you get to a 8.5 to begin with in the next 30, 60 days, right? Would that be pretty important? You go, oh yeah, that's fantastic. If they could help me increase my, if they had that great of a client success, client facing view, sure, I love that, right? Right, cool. Any questions? Ooh, that was pretty much it. Nice. Any questions on that?
So Henry just asked if everything over a 7 considered as good, what is the average there for a net promoter score?
Depends on the industry. I will tell you that. Every industry you look at, there's a different average. Automotive, legal, digital marketing, you can Google it. There's very different averages out there. Depends on what industry you're talking about, right? Some services and some industries tend to have higher complaints, or I would say higher risk than others, right? They tend to have a bit lower NPS score or NPS. So the average would depend on the industry, I would say. For something like us, like selling educational products, info type stuff. I mean, again, our NPS for Danlock organization is only for HTC, HIC. Well, we don't have an NPS for Dragon 100, right? Yet or whatever. Right? So like educational product, 9 is pretty high. I would say 9 is pretty damn high. I would say honestly 7 is like, okay, this is just my personal opinion, right? Anything under 8 to me, I'd be a bit wary of, right? Like if anything under 8, I'd be like, yeah, like I don't know. But again, depends on industry. Airlines have a very wide spectrum of NPS scores. Budget airlines, premium airlines, right? Depends. You fly coach, first class, business class. Like everyone's gonna rate it very differently. Awesome. So I'm gonna get some water. Felix and Sean, you guys want to kick this part off, and I'll be right back. We're gonna do some discussion role plays, and I think this is a really key part in terms of now you know these terms, and later you're gonna learn some of the very critical questions to ask. But here we're gonna talk about the tone, what you're sounding like on the call, right? Like how your pace, tonality, everything. So I'm gonna get some water. If Sean and Felix, you guys wanna kick this off, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Yeah. So I talk to people a lot about this because positioning, framing, and confidence in a B2B call is very important. So it's very different than a B2C call. A B2C call is a lot more personal. You're looking at someone's personal pain versus someone's business pain. The questions you're going to ask at a B2C call are different than the ones you'd ask in a B2B call, but it's also how you present yourself. In a business call, people can see the moment you show any bit of wavering in your frame and confidence. If you come across as you're pretty new and you don't know what you're asking, you're going to have a tough time on B2B calls. So I'll give you an example. If you come on the call and you go, well, Mr. Prospect, I'm not sure what it is that your business does, but I have something that might be able to help you. Can I ask you about it? You hear the verbal tick of the over and over and over again. It's a measure of confidence. A keen business owner on the other end of the line is going to pick that up and realize you don't know what you're doing or what you're talking about. Business owners are very quick to pick up on that. Business owners also, because they're very busy, and you're potentially some days the 14th or 15th person that they've heard from in a day. You have to set yourself apart from the 14 or 15 that called earlier in the day. A good example I always give is, I worked in the IT sector for many years, and I dealt with a large supplier. And I knew every day that large supplier was calling, because every time they called, their tonality was, oh, hey, how are you? Would you like me to help you? And would you like me to pat your head? And it just, when you're a business owner, you cringe when you hear that kind of tonality and frame, because it's just, you know that they're there to sell you the next biggest thing, and the first thing you want to do is go, just get off the phone. So, you know, it's very important that you have a good solid tonality and a good frame. Now, in B2B calls, I find a very confident, straightforward, no beating around the bush, just straightforward to the point, typically with most business owners will work. Yes, you'll get some that want to talk and go on for a lot, but because business owners are very busy, they got stuff they need to do, and again, they've heard a lot of pitches all the day. If you're quick and to the point and you skip the extra salesy bit, you're more up to get a response than you would these other people that I've talked about before. The other thing is, if you have good positioning and you have good frame and show confidence, you don't have to necessarily know all the answers they need, but you can get away with a lot more than if you show your weakness. Business owners, if you can show a good, strong frame, but maybe you don't have all the answers, but you can show them that you can get them the answers that they're looking for, you'll still have a good shot at getting that sale. But if you're all over the place and you've got that, or they go and say, well, unless you're going to buy something for me today, I'm not going to talk to you, and you just shut down, then you're going to end up, you lose your frame in the middle of the call, you're going to run into a problem as well. So it's consistency, it's keeping confidence, and really don't let them see you sweat. It's make sure you hold that even keel all the way through. And you know what, it's really a lot simpler than some people make it. Some people overthink it and don't keep it simple. The one thing when you get to doing FCC calls, the way I like to talk about it is, we aren't robotic on our calls. We don't read from a script, but the actual method behind what we do in an FCC call is very regimented. So you're going to set yourself up with a consistent positioning and frame that you'll start out your call with. If you open your FCC call up with a standard, whether it's you use the Columbo technique or you use a pattern interrupt, have it all planned out, ready to go, so that way when you do your call, you do it consistently every time. And I found it was much easier, rather than trying to change up and do things differently every time. I found that if I just worked on trying a consistent frame, positioning, and method to my call, I just got better and better and better. And it's the repetition that's going to make you have that strong positioning and framing that is going to make you more and more successful as a B2B rep. Does that make sense?
And we're going to do a bit of role plays in a bit here with Sean and Felix. The one thing I also wanted to add, I'm also going to ask a question, right? Who is guilty of this? Because I'm going to be the first one to put up my hand. But one of my flaws when it comes to, one of my weaknesses when it comes to closing, when asking questions is, you ever got the feeling where or the thing where you ask a question, but then you like to add like a follow-up question and a follow-up question. It's like, so you're going to ask, right? Like, how much money do you make per month? You do, how much money do you make? And you always add a next per month, right? Or you ask a question, you add a small question, then you add a small question. That will kill the sale tremendously in B2B. Sifu said not to do it. In B2B, it's extremely where, to the point where you've got to be very concise, very abrupt, right? So when I used to be nervous, I used to go, so how much was your business revenue last year? Annual revenue last year, right? Then it's then that itself, that two breaks right there. Yeah. The best thing to do is just shut up, just close your mouth. But remember, again, the key things to closing, and one of the most powerful things is silence, right? Not saying anything at all. Just the best thing to do is just try to bite your lip, close it. Even though the question didn't come out too well, don't try to go back and fix it right away, because it just sounds very, you just sound nervous and you just sound unconfident, right? Just fix it, close it. If they ask, well, what do you mean by that? I didn't get it. Then you go, what was your annual revenue last year, right? Then you come back and then you restate it in a better way. And because I find when I'm nervous and I speak fast, just, you ask one question, follow-up question, right? Just try to fix what you're saying. And it helps your pace. It helps your pace too, if you think about it.
And this is also a place where shorter questions, straightforward questions will get you less tongue-tied than big, long questions. One of the other things you'll find even more so in a B2B call versus a B2C call is you should be doing less talking than your prospect. So if you're asking short and simple questions and letting them give the answers, then you set up the premise for that to happen. Saw a lot of times is people trying B2B get very wound up and they gotta spill their guts. They gotta get everything out all at once. And that's not the case. You need to have short and simple, concise questions, let them give the answers. Even if you got to split some information up into 3 or 4 parts, you'll still get there. You don't have to be in that bigger rush to just spill it all out.
And something you'll find too that I personally found, which at first I thought was pretty intimidating, but something you notice with like business owners, C-level executives, directors, they also tend to respond with very short, concise, abrupt statements just because that's just their style of speaking. They're very to the point. They don't have all time in the day to talk to you, right? And they want to just get to the point, get to the bottom of this. They want to bottom line everything. And they will respond with a very short, if you ask them, you know, how much was the business revenue last year? They just go 10 mil. Then don't take it as like, oh, this guy doesn't want to talk to me because I probably messed up, or I'm now, you know, and I'm trying to go in deep and try to make him or her talk more, right? No, just respect that. Respect that is their communication style. And the best way for me, the most effective way to get someone to open up, even in a B2B call, is just tell me more, right? Can you tell me more? Put it on them, put the ball back in their court. It makes them feel like they now have an opportunity to help you out, right? To kind of explain to you what that means, right? But it also does matter the tonality, the way you ask it, when you ask it. Because sometimes if you say, tell me more, and let's say you've done that like 5 times throughout the call, right? Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. Then you're just repeating yourself. It's just gonna kill everything because they're like, oh well, this guy is just using a sales tactic to get me to speak more, right? So genuine, different variety, as well as you wanna, and this is where it's also much more key than B2C. You've got to be very purposeful in asking questions. Like the questions you ask, they really should have a end goal that, you know, like a point to it, right? You don't just ask a question for the sake of asking a question. You ask it because there's a reason for that. The reason I ask, Mr. Business Owner, is because of X. The reason I asked you that personal question just now, Mr. Business Owner, is because of Y. Because of this solution, because of this idea that I wanted to share with you. And I could now give you a better solution because you shared that with me. That has to be a purpose to it. So Sean, Felix, do you want to quickly do a role play? So sure. we'll show you I'll let Sean do the call. You can see what Sean's tonality, his frame is. And then maybe Felix, you play the business owner. You guys can play whatever you want, IT, industry, Dragon 100, whatever, have fun, go at it.
What would you like to do, Sean?
Oh, we might as well just stick with Dragon 100. That seems to be the typical thing when you can be let's stick with a technology business owner, because that's basically a lot of where my background is. So
I'll be a mobile app kind of company, startup, 2 years.
Maybe mobile app CEO that saw Dragon 100 and now is a bit interested in it, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Are you saying Sean is cold outreach to you? Which one?
Let's do a cold outreach.
Okay. So you don't know.
We'll say that I saw an article on LinkedIn about what you guys are doing. I'll come up with something.
Let's do it.
Okay. Ring, ring.
Hello, Felix speaking.
Hi, Felix. It's Sean Lawrence calling. I know you don't know me, but do you have a few minutes to talk?
Sure. I have some time in between meetings.
Okay. The reason for my call, I'm calling from Dan Lok organization. Dan Lok is putting together an advisory board of elite level entrepreneurs, and I seen one of your posts on LinkedIn about what you guys are doing in the mobile application space. And first of all, wanted to congratulate you. You guys are making some really great strides there.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not easy during these times to still keep going, going positive in a lot of different things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just wanted to congratulate you. And like I said, Dan's looking for elite level business owners who would be interested in the assistance of an advisory board that would help them scale their business in the face of disruption. Uh, I'm not sure how you guys are doing in the face of, our current situation, but how are things going for you right now?
Well, we have to kind of downsize a little bit on our company because of what's happened a month, 2 months ago. But yeah, we're surviving. We're changing the way we work to adapt to what's going on with the economy. So yeah, we're doing okay. We're coming with a lot of ideas, a lot of new plans to implement.
That sounds good. Can I ask you, have you ever made use of an advisory board before?
Not really. I mean, I have been talking to a lot of other business owners that do similar things. That where I usually get a lot of advice, and I took some programs myself as well.
Okay. And how's that been working for you so far?
I mean, there's so much information out there. There's just a lot of different people doing this, doing that. So really finding that one thing that really works for me, it's something that it's getting there. Just always need to know who to choose from, right?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time, and I'm sure you're a pretty busy person yourself, but let's suppose I had an option available to you where this advisory board would have a group of people who might be able to provide you with some guidance and some advice from trusted sources that have built, 7 and 8 figure companies that potentially could save you some time and some headache that you've been through in the past. Would that be something of value to you that we could have maybe a deeper discussion on a day where we both have some time?
How long would that, like, what is that call is about?
So the call would take about 15 minutes. I could go into a little more depth about what the advisory board is about. I'd have to ask some questions to make sure that this is a good fit because, this isn't for everybody. So there would be some qualifying questions I need to ask about your business just to make sure that there's value that we can provide to you and you can get value from us. And then we would see where we go from there. Could we do that?
Okay. Are you going to send me some information? So I never heard of you before, as you said, right?
For sure. Yeah, I have a document I can send you ahead of time that you can review. And then I can go over that information with you in detail when we connect. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, can I get your proper email address?
It's felix@mobileapp.com.
Okay, Felix spelled Felix?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. And so when would be a good time we could schedule to follow up and I could go through this information with you?
Well, I'm looking at, I have Friday at 11 a.m. I can have like 15, 30 minutes there.
Okay, you're Pacific time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so 11 a.m. Pacific time on Friday?
Sure.
And this is still the best number to get a hold of you at on Friday?
Yep. What's your name again?
Sean.
Sean, got it. Okay. Am I expecting an email from you or anything like that?
Yeah, you'll see an email from me. It'll come from Sean Lawrence at dragon100.com. And if you don't see it right away, just double check your spam folder to make sure it doesn't get caught there. If for some reason there's any problems when we speak on Friday, I can make sure you have that information in your hands when we speak.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I look forward to speaking with you at 11 o'clock on Friday, and we can get into a little bit deeper dive on how this will benefit your business.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Fantastic. And that is the tonality and the frame of an SDR, true SDR for sure. Want to add anyone wants to share what they've noticed, what they felt like about the call in general, just feel free to unmute. We'll make this a quick discussion and then we'll move on.
So Chris speaking here. I do want to mention one thing is Sifu actually banged on about this many, many seasons ago of when we were reaching out to influencers as well. And one of the things is I learned through many mistakes. But Sean set up the time there in the communication rather than just sending out a Calendly link or anything like that. With what I learned with speaking business owners, they really do prefer to organize a time there and then, whether it is on a call or say a message, say LinkedIn or anything like that.
Yeah, we've actually found in our experience that sending out a booking link is not a great way to make sure you get a return phone call. The best way is to book with them right there and then.
Yeah.
This is Patrick. That's actually also what I experienced, because I always had to deal with those email brush-offs, to call it in that way. And I really like the way, Sean, you got the commitment in the end. You just ask when is a good time to follow up with you, so we could go over that together.
And I've even gone to the point where they're like, well, just send me the information and I'll get back to you. I'd rather say, you know what, can I call you tomorrow and just make sure that you got the information? Like, I want a commitment out of them one way or the other. Because if they're not ready to commit to you, they're probably just blowing you off.
Yeah.
One thing to round it off that I want to share that I recently picked up on, and just focusing on the part when Sean said, what's the best time for you, is I actually heard from a fellow friend of mine, HTC brother, who's in the B2B space as well, is he says, when he's setting up the time, he asks them, what time makes best sense to you or for you? And that's just hitting on a little bit more of the emerald, but that's something that he's found a lot of success with as well.
All right, cool. Let's go on. We are at 5:07. I think we will round this up pretty nicely because we also want to have a couple minutes at the end for Q&As. So let us go into the next section, which is really critical or crucial B2B questions to ask. Again, right, like just because we say it's crucial or critical doesn't mean in every call you will script it out and ask, like go down the list and ask, right? It really does depend, use common sense on the flow of the call. The flow, right, like be like water, and then when it makes sense to you, then you ask. But we found in our experience that when you don't ask these questions, they usually leave a lot of objections or a lot of gaps in the prospect's mind. And when you do ask these questions properly, it also gives you a bigger, better understanding of your business, as well as it helps you formulate next step, next action plan, as well as understand the different pains and the different goals to hit, right, in terms of setting up the next steps in solution. So it's really simple. I just classify it in like a couple of different steps, right? You got the needs, you got the budget, you got decision making, and you got closing. It's pretty much almost like B2C, but I just put it in those 4 categories to make it easier to remember, right? Because every time you go on a call, you're always going to talk about those things anyways, right? Those same things. So the first one is very simple. It's literally, you know, if this is where they're calling you sort of inbound, where they're reaching out to you, you just ask them on a call, hey, you know, Mr. Business Owner, how did you happen to hear about us? That's the first thing, I mean, and if you recall in your experiences too, right? Many of you, if you've spoken to different companies, the first thing the call rep might do is ask you, how did you hear about us, right? I'm sure some of you, you guys have got that, right? When you pick up a phone or when you call in, they might ask you, how do you hear about us, right? Because that's a good way. Now, this is a bit deeper, but a more important thing to this is more like offline conversion tracking. You also, like for me, like if this is my business and you called me, I want to know what marketing efforts are working for me, or did you find me organically, or did your friend refer you to me, right? It helps me gauge what are my more effective methods, and I would write them down and note them. This inbound caller came to me through a referral. This person came to me through one of my Facebook ads my campaigns launched 2 months ago. I want to know that. It is offline conversion tracking, right? Which is something else. It's a different topic, but it's the difference between offline and online. It's online, you know, online conversion tracking is like with your computer cookies on your browser, or like pixels, right? On your browser. So you click on the site, they pixel you, right? UTM links, unique tracking links, and then cookies, just what's stored in your browser. But then offline is something where, like for example, HubSpot, they let you combine both offline and online to help you see a full buyer's journey. Same as Google Analytics too, right? So this is really important. The other reason why this is important, really, is because you also want to just, this is really a great way to start a call if you think about it, because it really diffuses a lot of things. And instead of jumping right into the meat and potatoes, you just get to know, just get to talk about, okay, you heard it from Mike. Yeah, Mike was a great client of ours. What did, I'm curious, what did he tell you about us, right? I get to start off in a more light-hearted setting, mood. And I like that. I really like to set things off that way. You found us from a Facebook ad? Cool, which one was it? Do you remember what picture it was, what you clicked on? It's helpful because I want to know what worked, right? And then you laugh, you make a joke about it. So I love starting calls off a bit lighthearted. Because who says a B2B call has to be all serious and dull, right? And just like, talking numbers, right? That's not, it doesn't have to be that way all the time, right? So I like that. That's a great opening question for me. Anything else to add, Sean, Felix? No. Okay. This one is a lot of this, like the way you think about it, right? The best way to think about it is you look at the B2C questions that we learned in HCC, right? The level 3 pain, the goals, right? The heaven and the hell. You modify that. This is where business acumen comes in, right? You modify it to fit the languaging of B2B. So instead of asking, like, let's say I'm talking to a B2B client about HTC, right? I might ask them, so, Mr. Prospect, right now in your life, what would you say is the biggest struggle personally, right? Obviously with tonality, with a more pearl, right? And they might tell me, oh, my income, right? My income is an issue. Well, if you don't mind me asking, how far away are you from your income goal? Like, what's your income goal, right? So that's B2C, right? B2B, I would say, so Mr. Prospect, right now in this era, in this scenario, in this season, what would you say are your top 3 challenges that you've seen your company face so far? 1, 2, 3. Bam, right? You can almost in a way translate it. Sean, Felix?
This is a question that tonality matters so much. You turn around and phrase it the wrong way, you'll piss the business owner off. Just with a change in tonality. It's like,
do the wrong way, Sean.
So what are the top challenges your company is currently facing, huh? Or, right. So tell me, what are the top challenges your company is currently facing? Which one would you answer? Most business owners won't even answer the first one. They'll hang up on you.
Oh yeah, exactly, right? Condescending, right? You're looking down, someone's looking down on them, right?
And this is something that you have to have a little bit of judgment on. Where are you at in terms of the trust that you have between you and them, right? Like, if you just throw this question out in the first place, they're like, huh? Like, I don't even know you. Why would I have to tell you my top challenges? And also the wordings could mean something too, right? Sometimes if it's not the owner that you're talking to, then you're talking to them about their company might not make sense. Maybe it's more of your department, right? Then they will be a lot more relatable to that than your company. So think about
that's perfect.
Those
that's perfect, things, right? So. Look at the department, the division, the team. What is your team currently facing, right? What are you currently facing as a business owner? That's very key. That's very key. To go back to what I think Sean said, tonality. Oh yeah, what Felix said. I think someone in the chat asked about a buffer. So I don't know. This is just for me personally. Sometimes during a discovery call, like an SDR outbound call, the way I buffer it before I ask this question is with what we learned in HTC, right? Is literally like, Mr. Prospect, I know this is a little, I won't say that. I would probably say, if you don't mind me asking, right? Would you name a few challenges you're currently facing? That would be my buffer. Simple, straight to the point. If they don't want to answer they don't want to give me all they don't want to give me all the in-depth detail, that's fine, right? That's fine.
And it all depends on where you're at in the call too. Sometimes just with the context of where you're at in the call, you can ask this question directly. But sometimes you do have to buffer it. Again, a lot of B2B calls are very much a go with the flow and take one question and expand on it and then go from there. Rather, the biggest thing is, though, you're following a process in your B2B call. It needs to have it can't be all over the place. So it needs to be not just maybe not as much a buffered question as it is a well-positioned question.
Oh, one thing that I like to do is I'll first ask, what is the top challenges you are facing currently, and then move on to your company, because you can relate to their challenges first. They're like, oh, you're facing these challenges, and how does that relate to your company? They'll review so much more. I like doing that too sometimes.
Awesome, cool. Next one, again, right, ties into, we talk about pains, goals. Instead of asking a B2C client, so Mr. Prospect, how much would you like to make? Because this is talking about HTC, right? Closing HTC. What's your income goal? What would you like to hit? Or what would you like to make in the next 6 months or 12 months from now, right? You're currently at 2K a month. What would you like to be at 6 months from now? That's more of a B2C type question, right? You guys are familiar with that. For this, it's the same, right? Mr. Business Owner, this is important to you. So I want to write this down. What are the results you want to achieve working with, and this is the part where it's key, where sometimes I like to buffer it by pointing the fact that they don't necessarily have to work with us. And I think this is the key, because it really diffuses the fact that you're just here to sell them something. Because I like to also start or end things with, even if you don't work with us, or if you don't end up working with us, that's okay, or whatever the solution is. Or basically, the point of it is like this, right? Regardless of who you work with, whether it's me, whether it's someone else, what are the results you want to achieve? Like, literally, that's the question. That's the intent of it all, right? It doesn't matter who you're working with. What is your end goal, right? Then that's what I care about. I don't care about pushing my agenda, my company on them right now. I really don't. That's not what we should be doing anyways. So regardless of who you work with, what are the results you want to see happen in 6 months? Right? That diffuses the whole salesy, you're just here to sell me shit. No, don't care. I don't care who you work with. It doesn't matter if it's me or not. Then that's how that's how you would say I would ask that question as well. Any Sean, Felix? Yes, next one. Good.
So just to add a little bit to it, B2B and B2C are similar in one respect, and that's that you're there to provide your prospect value. And if you're there to provide them value first, that's going to get you the sale more than trying to sell them anything directly up front. So this question really helps you establish what value you can provide.
Yes. Yep. I think this one is, I'll just give you a quick sort of back and forth, like a mini role play, right? It's like when I ask, what are the results you want to achieve? And someone might say, depending on the context, right? They want to increase their overall profit margin by 20%. That's as a business owner, that's my goal for this calendar year, 2020. We want to increase our overall business profit margins by 20%, right? Then the follow-up question would be, now again, depending on where you are in the call, it's really important, like what Sean and Felix said. Also depends on how much time you have left in your call. You always have many options to ask a follow-up question on. One follow-up question would be, this is where I would say you're more leading with your offer, is if we had a solution that could help you get to that 20% by the end of the year, would you be interested in learning more about it? That could be one option, right? I could ask that. I could say that. And I would say that would be, depending on where you're on a call, I might lead with that. That's my, that, and then let's make a time, future, and let's go talk about it more, right? Like what Sean did just now. The other one would be, what have you tried so far to get to that 20? What are you considering trying to get to 20% profit margin, 20% increased profit margin this year? Like, what's in your head, Mr. Business Owner? What are you considering? Let them tell you what they think the solution is, because you want to know what they're considering, and then I can go from there. Have you thought about X? Have you thought about, instead of doing X, you could do Y? Right, so that's where all the follow-up. So we're not going to go into like a whole role play today for this, but you will see how you can link a follow-up question to a question to a question. And depending on where you are on the call, there is always a better question to ask. I always see closing when asking questions, it's almost like a game. To me, it's like a game. It really is a game. Because whenever the prospect says something, you always have more than one way to answer. Think about it, right? Like, you have millions of ways to respond to whatever people say. I always think of it as a game and a challenge to find out which reply gets the best result, gets the best result in the fastest time. To me, it's a game, right? Because depending on where I am and how it is and the context and everything, I might go with this question today because I know that question is going to deliver the results I want. If not, maybe I will go with this question that way because this prospect is not really opening himself or herself up. I need to go a bit deeper. So I'm going to ask this question to get there. So it's like, we're never going to be able to give you a script or like the perfect B2B question list because it doesn't exist. It's like what Sean and Felix said, you got to flow, you got to flow, you got to flow. You just got to flow. But the benefit of having a class like this is if you can understand the principle, like what Sifu would say, you understand the principle, the why, and you have more tools in your tool belt, more questions to ask, right? You'll be able to pull it out and use it when you need to. It's better to know 1,000,000 ways and pick one than only having 100 ways, right? I'd rather have 1,000,000 and know all of them and know which one to use, right? Like just expand your cup. This one is a very interesting question. I like it, but also you got to be careful when using it because like Sean said, if you sound too cocky, no one's going to reply you with this question. It's in a way, it's a loaded question and the prospect, they're not stupid, right? they know why you're asking this question, right? Mr. Business Owner, and I'm trying to think of a context because it's a great question when done right. And all these questions are great only when done right. This is really what you're trying to get at is, I would say the ideal scenario for this, when I've used it in a B2B call, was when I've gotten the rapport. I probably wouldn't do this on the discovery call. I probably do this if I was an AE for sure, build rapport, knows the company, trust the company a bit more, right? They know why we're speaking today. Then I would probably ask them, so Mrs. Business Owner, before we get down in the weeds, I want to actually know what your must-haves, your should-haves, and your could-haves are in regards to your solution, in regards to this solution. So at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what really needs to happen? That's your must-have, right? And then what's your should-have and a nice-to-have, right? Like that's kind of where I would position that question. But it's a great question because it literally gets the prospect to list out all what's in their head. Literally, like if you execute this right, I will tell you what I really need to have. I will tell you what would be nice to have, and I will tell you what I don't really care about. Like I want to get 20. So one, I need to get a 20% profit margin increase. That's a must-have, right? I should be able to do it in 6 months or less. And a nice-to-have might be, my net promoter score. I want to be able to sell products that will give me an average of 9 or above. That's a nice-to-have, right? Then that gives me a list. Boom, right there. You got your whole question, your whole combo list of things to know.
So I typically use this later in a closing call when I'm getting close to that point where I want to know what is going to take this prospect from being maybe a little bit on the fence and full of objections to we're down to the brass tacks and we know what we need to be able to provide to make this deal happen. So this is a great question when you get close to that later part of the call. And again, more of an AE type call where you're getting closer to the close and you need to know what's going to be the decision makers, because this question will give you those decision makers.
Yeah, and I'm going to add on top a little bit on my own experience as a product manager before when it comes to these questions is I like to frame it as I'm going to gather the requirements, gather what you need, like what the needs are, and then I ask them, are these things a must-have, should-have, or could-have, instead of the other way? What are your must-have, should-have, could-have? Because sometimes when you talk to the prospect or when you talk to anyone, they might not know until you ask them, oh, well, you have all these needs. Is it a must-have, should-have, or could-have? Like that way, they would answer those questions much easier because sometimes they might not have a very clear, like, is it must or should or could? Because sometimes they don't think that way. So that way is another way for me to love using this questions on as well.
Oh, did my slide? Oh no, my slide's good. I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, exactly right, Felix. There's a lot of ways to ask it as well. You want to demonstrate the question? Sure. I mean, let's do it. We could put in an AE closing call. If someone wants to play Sean or Felix. I think Felix gave you an example just now already. Felix's example, which is a good way of doing it, is really, you have the list of things that the prospect wants or needs, right? And then you clarify with them, Mr. Prospect, you listed out on this call today, you listed out 6 things that you would like to have. Now from this list of 6 things, what is really the key? What are the real must-have from this list? What is like a non-negotiable, right? Another term would be a non-negotiable that needs to happen. Which one out of the 6 is a non-negotiable, right? And then which one is the nice to have? Like if you don't have it, it's not a deal breaker, but it's just nice to have. I would frame it that way, right? You break it out into those kind of questions. And then which one is really, it's just, it's nice to have, but really don't need it.
Yeah, is it nice to have or must have? Sometimes that 2 is enough. That you can really tell they can just put things in the bucket. And sometimes you might misunderstood. Like they spend so much time on talking about one need, but that ends up being a nice to have. But they actually have a much bigger problem that you never discussed as a must have, that you might need to spend some time on a different call to talk about it. So you need to clarify whatever that needs that you're talking about is a must, should, or could all the time.
And the key here, the reason why this is a very powerful question is because, like what Felix just said, sometimes on the call, you really did not hit the real pain. You really did not hit the real need. You need to say, hey, Mr. Prospect, we spoke about these things. I just want to confirm that we actually spoke about your must-have. Was this in that list? Did we miss something? Right? Because if you miss that and you move on to try to close a deal, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen because they subconsciously, and they'll find out later that you never discussed their most important need that they really have to have. Right? So you use this to stop yourself. You stop yourself and you ask, before we move any further, Mr. Prospect, Mr. Business Owner, I want to make sure that these 6 things, there's nothing else we need to add to this list. They're all your must-haves, right? Right? And then that's where you go from. You go from that clarification point. Okay. Next category, decision-making. This one definitely is different than B2C, I would say. I've almost never asked, I won't say never, but rarely have I asked a HTC prospect, what's your decision-making process like, Mr. Prospect? Right? You don't do that, right? Like, well, true. Sometimes it could be wife, right? It could be their husband, their wife, their spouse, but realistically, I don't ask that to B2C that way. I really don't. I ask decision maker for B2C in the beginning, right? Is there anyone else that needs to be on this call? Hey, John, before you make a decision like this, is there anyone else that should be involved, right? Before you invest in HTC. That's kind of what I would do. But for this with B2B, it's a really direct question that is separate from B2C. This question is direct. You just throw it out there. I would throw it out there. Hey, Mike, in your company, may I ask, what's your decision-making process like? Because 99%, I've never had a business owner or executive or director not answer this question. No, everyone's, like, to me, very direct, very honest. Yeah, we got a CFO. She has to look at the budget. She has to look at the quote. We got a CEO. He has to review the proposal. Like, no one's going to beat around the bush, right? So this is a very great question to ask, and it should be asked. Right? Because B2C, like, we don't ask that, right? But B2B, this has to be asked. Definitely has to be asked. Don't miss this question out, for sure.
And this is a very important question for the AE, because we've already had a couple situations in the past where we didn't make sure we clarified this question, and we actually needed to have 2 people in the AE's closing call instead of 1. A lot of B2B decisions aren't made with 1 person in the room. They're made with multiple people in the room. So definitely something that you need to clarify ahead of time.
Yeah, definitely. This is a must as compared to B2C, for sure. It's interesting because B2C, when you ask this kind of, I find in personal experience, maybe you guys can confirm, right? When I ask something, like when you see something like this, the B2C prospect will feel like you're trying to sell them, either the husband and the wife, on something, right? Like they know you're trying to sell them, pitch them something. They don't like it. Sometimes they don't like the question. They don't want to answer it. But in B2B, this is a very, very common question. It's completely not taboo. It's very opposite, right? It's like, this is a very common question. Just ask it. and make sure you write down the decision makers, because they have no reason to lie about it, unless you really piss them off, or you're just messing up the entire call, right? There's no way it's not taboo at all. Basically, is the point. This is key as well. Most people ask, what's your decision-making process? And most people ask who is involved in the process, but they always forget to ask, what role do you, the person I'm speaking to right now, play in the decision-making process? Are you the facilitator? Are you the actual decision maker? Are you the champion? Champion meaning, if I get you on my side, you're gonna help me move this deal forward. What are you? Most people forget to ask that, right? It's like they assume that it's a decision maker, right? But then again, he or she could not be the decision maker. They're just here to get that info, and then they have to bring it on to the real decision makers. You want to know who they are. You have to know what role do you play. So, Mr. Prospect, if you don't mind me asking, what role do you play in that process you just mentioned? I'm one of the decision makers. Okay, understood. Got it. You're one of them as well. Perfect. Right. Oh no, I'm not a decision maker. I just want to bring this information up to my CEO. Then you know in your head, I should be talking to the CEO, right? You make the connection. Then you can think about the internal champion conversation, where this is a separate topic for next. It's different, separate topic. But if you can now close this person to becoming a champion for you within his or her company, they will help you push the deal forward. It's what I know we talked about this in IC before, right? It's like, Mr. Prospect, if you could get this deal closed and we could increase your company's revenue by X amount, how would that make you look in front of your company, in front of the CEO, right? Oh, I would feel like a hero. They will look at me like I'm a hero. Like that's the internal champion conversation. It's different, but I'm just giving you guys the importance of this, right? Okay. And then the last one, right? Who are all the stakeholders involved in this deal? Again, these are the 3 questions that I would never miss in a call, for sure. I like to get this out of the way right away. B2B, these 3 questions are one of my first 3 questions. Surely, for sure. Because this is very important. Like, you just gotta know it. Most people don't ask these questions though. All right. Felix or Sean, anything to add to decision making? Because I think we're hitting the last section and then we're done today. No?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. So
awesome. The last one, this again, very rarely used, but very key, very, very, very extremely crucially key, is Mr. Prospect, you mentioned all these decision makers. Out of curiosity, would it be any obstacles with this deal? Right? What concerns might they have? Like, off the top of your head, do you know what I should be aware of when talking to your CFO? Or, Mr. Prospect, I'm just curious, when you bring this to your CFO, you said she's a decision maker. Do you know what kind of concern she might have? Right? Because now this what you get this, that if you get this up front right now, you will help you pre-frame and help you get the ammunition you need to handle the future calls later on when you actually talk to the CFO. If you do, right? You want to know these objections up front. It gives you time to prepare for them. And you can even ask the guy, Mr. Prospect, based on your experience, what was the best way or what was the most effective way you found that helped diffuse or reduce that concern that your CFO had? What do you find in the past other people did that helped, remove this obstacle? Ask them for their experience. How did they get past the CFO? That's it. That's what you use this for, right? It's important. Again, I would say these 4 decision-making questions, you never want to miss them. Never. I would say it's a tragedy if you miss any of these because they're so key. And people will most likely tell you when you ask them the right way, right context, right situation. Okay, and the last part, I just realized, wow, decision making is pretty long. I just added a couple here. This is also very, very key. I think the whole decision making section, like these 5, 6, whatever, just, yeah, very, very key questions. Just I always ask them, is what I would say. What's the timeline for making a decision? Because you want to know the decision making process, right? Usually on average, Mr. Prospect, what is the timeline for you and your company or for your company or for your C-level team to make these decisions for a solution like this, right? That will tell you, well, based on my experience in the past, when we implemented our new CRM, it took us about 3 months, all the way from the demo, all the way to getting the budget approved, to getting my CEO to review it, going to the board for approval. Took about 3 months. And for you, at least you know, right? That's what it is for this company in particular. What is there a question? Which concerns fall often in the scope? Maybe Bogdan, you want to unmute yourself? I don't really understand what your concern is. Which concerns fall often in the scope of say key players?
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
No, Joel, it's just a variation of that question. I used to use a lot.
Got it. That's a variation. Yeah. Great. Yep. Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, rephrase these questions, right? You don't have to use them word for word. Whatever works best for you, whatever's most natural, definitely just change it. But the idea, right? The key, the reason is there. If that's the reason, right? Why you do it.
Yeah, the idea is the same.
Yeah. Would you push the deadline? That's a good question. Would you push the deadline? So that's actually a great question. When we talk to HubSpot and when we talk to a bunch of different tools that we implemented in Dan Lok organization, the AEs were great at that. So Dan, that's actually a great question. Like they have to do it carefully. I remember when we talked to Gong.io too, the AE also tried to close this by asking us, basically trying to get us to shorten our sales cycle, right? So I would say very experienced AEs, if they do it right, they might do it. That could be done, definitely. Because obviously it's a benefit. If you can shorten the sales cycle, you can get the sale faster for your company. It's a good thing, right? Why would you wait 3 months if you get it in 1 month? So, but I would say the way you ask it, and again, your rapport, how much rapport you build, tonality, it's really a factor when you want to push that shortened deadline for sure. Because the way that the Gong guy did it was okay. Because he asked me, because I was talking to them about implementing sales AI, right, for the team. But the way he asked was like, I said, usually, our CFO might take about 2 months to review it. I think he said something along the lines like, if I could provide you all this information to give to your CFO faster or quicker, would you be able to shorten that? I don't think he said that exactly, but basically the point was, if you could give us that information, or you could help us set the things up, the material for the CFO, could we possibly shorten the deadline? And I said, yeah, maybe. I said possibly. So that's the way he did it pretty effectively, right? So Dan, did I answer your question? It's pretty much, yeah, you could do it. If you position yourself properly and you ask the right question, yeah. You absolutely.
A lot of people will tie shortening a timeline to some kind of incentive. So it's, like for the Gong guy to even build a little bit more on it, normally they only give a 2-week evaluation period, but he could extend it to 4 weeks, but in exchange for that, he would need an answer.
Us to make a decision sooner, yeah. Yeah.
So good AEs will use it as they'll give, it's a give and take. I'll give you something, but I need something in return.
Yeah, the Gong guy I would say the Gong guy is pretty okay. I would say most of the AEs I've talked to, that guy was not bad, but he's a senior AE at Gong, so not surprised. The HubSpot guy Gong guy was okay. I respected him, but a lot of his questions, well, what we shared with you today, very standard AE questions. All this is like pretty much what the guy asked me. And Sean was there, Felix was there, so they're very familiar as well. It's funny thinking about that guy. He's interesting. He was very, almost in a way, he was pushy, but I could tell he was being pushy because I knew that was his job. Like the questions he asked were definitely like crossing the line. He was like, I just want to get the deal done. I want to get the deal done, right, Sean? It was funny, right?
But I think because he knew he was talking to salespeople, he could push it a little bit, and he was trying to see where the edge was.
Yeah. In the end, at one point, I was just like I was like, dude, like, I got it. Just hurry up. Let's just get it over with. Like, I was just like, I could tell what he was trying to do, right? So, yeah, but that's how it is, right? That's what sales is. Yeah, he was a good AE, though. I would say I respect that. Okay, we're almost done. I didn't expect this to go over an hour and a half, but I think we're almost there. Definitely, this one, again, good question, but tonality, context, everything as always applies, right? You don't just go, what's your budget? Like, what the fuck, right? Like, obviously, like that, no one's gonna do that. But I'm saying, like, you know, that tonality matters, right? Or you're scared and you go like, what's your budget? Like, no, of course not. That's exaggerations. But you know, Mr. Prospect, what is your budget for a solution like this? There, right? Mr. Prospect, what have you considered? What would you consider is reasonable, right, of an investment for a solution like this? There, another variation.
This is a one too that phrased right is between right and wrong is the difference between green monster and getting the answer you need.
Yeah, and I would say if you execute it properly, you will get a very honest. I will say most of the time you'll get a very honest answer, because they, again, like B2B, they really have no reason to lie to you, right? Like, you know, it's very different from B2C. I would say that much for sure. Like, also a lot of answers I've gotten were like, so the truth is, Joel, like, we've got a quarterly budget, and truthfully right now we're in May and we're already out of our budget for this quarter, right? So really, realistically, I would have another, you know, injection of budget funds next quarter. But they're honest. They tell me that. They say, you know what, I have our department's out of budget now, but maybe next quarter. Okay, I respect that, right? But again, if you're like the Gong AE and you got the balls, which sure, do it. Ask them, is there any chance you can get more budget this quarter? Push for it, right? Push for it. Ask it. The worst you can get is a no. Hey, you know, I'm just curious here. I know you said you guys ran out of budget this quarter, but if this solution, you know, really got you guys that 20% profit increase, right? Do you think it'd be realistic to just ask your CFO for just some more this quarter? Like, just ask for it. The worst they'll say is, no, it's not going to work. We tried it before. You might get a yeah. You know what? If you could give me the materials you talked about, I'll try to present it to my CFO. And that's also, by the way, side note, that's the difference between a great AE and a not great AE, right? You push the boundaries. That's what Desmond's good at. Desarge is great at that. He doesn't just take a no. You challenge the no. Why is it a no? Sure, you don't have budget now, but could you get the budget? Like, it's okay, not in that tonality, but that's my point. Like, making the point where a great AE will just go and push buttons. It's what the Gong guy did with us too. Okay, this is another one, which is, I like it. It's similar to the HTC B2C question, right? Have you looked at any other programs like this, right? Have you looked at Grant Cardone, Tai Lopez, like, you know, same thing, right? Have you invested in similar solutions? If so, if you have, how much? Have you looked at other CRMs? Oh yeah, we looked at Close.io, we looked at Salesforce. Okay, have you invested in them? No, not yet. Oh, okay, so, you know, I'm the HubSpot guy, right? And he asked that. This is a very commonplace question, right? It's key. Why do we want to ask that? Are you talking about this question or the one before? Dan? This one? Oh, I'm going to redirect this back to you. Why did Seafood tell us to ask this in HTC? This is an HTC question. Why do you want to know whether the prospect has invested in other programs? Come on, you should know this. We all went through HTC, guys.
I think because if they bought in the past, like they will buy again in the future, right?
Not only that. Okay, that's one. But what else? Okay, let me give you like, I'm selling HTC to you, right? I'm closing your HTC, and I want to ask you this, right? Have you invested in other programs? And you tell me, you know, I did Grant Cardone's course, I did Ty's course, I did whoever's course. What's important for that? What's the next question you would ask?
What's happened? Like,
yeah, exactly. What are your results? What are the results? What did you get from Grant's course? What did you get from Ty's course? Exactly. I want to know that, because that shows me your commitment. That shows me how you get results. Same thing here. You invested in HubSpot before. How did it work out for you guys? Did you guys like HubSpot? What did you not like about HubSpot? That's key. What did you like? This is another key. What did you like about HubSpot? Because then you can compare that solution to your solution. Seriously, right? That question, you go follow up. What did you like about them? What did you not like about them? And they'll tell you, well, the customer service, the implementation, you know, that client success guy wasn't nice to me. Like, they'll tell you. They tell you their concerns. Yeah, and then why are you looking for a new CRM now? I mean, you're a HubSpot. What's the problem? Right? And they'll tell you. Oh, the problem is I don't like their you know, the whatever, the customer service guy, right? Whatever, right? So like that's the same thing. It's the same concept from B2C. All right. This one, yes, similar to the previous question. When was the last time you made a purchasing decision for a solution like ours? Because the why behind this is more about the timeline too, because it's like, especially if you're like a SDR doing discovery call, and let's say CRMs, right? Let's say I'm the HubSpot SDR, I call up the company, I call up the executive or director, and I'm asking him, hey, so you know, Mr. Director, when was the last time your company made a purchasing decision for a CRM? If he or she told me 6 months ago we just invested in Salesforce, right? What does it tell you? Versus, oh yeah, we invested in Salesforce like 4 years ago. Okay, well, that is very different, right? Is it a time for an upgrade? Did you like Salesforce so far 6 months? Or why are you with Salesforce for 4 years? That's a great question to ask. Oh, we love Salesforce. We would never consider moving to any other CRM. All right, and from there, I will ask you, if you're a great SDR, you would push it. You wouldn't just say, oh, they said no, hang up, bye. That's a different topic, by the way. That's a whole different thing about people giving up way too early. When someone says no, they're just like, oh, they don't like, no. A no literally just means not right now. But let me go dig deeper, right? But that's the why for this question. That's why it's so important. You want to know when they invested in it, what the outcome was it good, was it bad? And would they consider investing in something like this again in the future? Yeah, same in dating, right? Exactly. All right, I think this is the last 2 slides. So closing, this is the end. When you want to tie a deal together, right? I found this one a helpful question for sure. It's again, this is sort of the same technique in B2C where you sort of, how many of you guys have heard this technique, right, in B2C where you repeat what the customer said on the call, right? You repeat it back to them, right? And you tie it back to the solution, right? It's literally the same thing. It's pretty much the same idea, right? You repeat based on what we discussed today, ABC 1, 2, 3. Do you think our solution is a good fit for your needs? Same concept, same idea, right? Yeah, maybe it's like, yeah, exactly. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's the same concept, B2C, B2B. Just you phrase it differently, but you get the same result, right? Yeah. And then this one is also very key. And this is what I feel a lot of people coming from B2C, they always forget to ask this question when they move to B2B, because in B2C, we typically don't ask this question. Like when someone's investing in HTC, very rare have I heard a closer ask, what steps do we need to make sure your investment happens? I've almost never heard that. I think I've heard it once or twice by some other closers, but rarely in B2C do people ask that, right? People usually either, there's so many ways of closing, right? They either ask for the credit card, or they ask for, where do you want to go from here, right? What do you want to do next? Right? Are you ready to make this investment? But in B2B, because it's a multi-step process, that sometimes is discovery call, and then now we're in a demo call, right? Now, like, this is a demo call, okay? So, Mr. Business Owner, what steps do we have to take to help make this deal happen? The reason I asked that is because I know decision-making process. They got the CFO, they got a CEO review, they got a board of directors approval. Only then it comes back to this guy. I want him or her to outline the steps, and it's super important. You know why? Because when I want to do follow-up later, I know exactly where they are in their own decision-making process. As an AE, I need to know where they are. Have you talked to your CFO yet? Yes. Where is it now? Okay, it's at the board. Got it. So the next step would be pretty clear, right? It will go back to you, and then if they say yes, be a deal, right? Yes, got it. You need to know the steps so that your follow-up, so that your direction, your next steps are clear. And this is key. This question has to be asked as well. You definitely want to know the steps. It's a multi-step process most of the times. All right, and we are good. Oh, no, wait, I thought we were good. I thought we were slide 28, slide 29. This is, again, similar principle, but I like this question a lot because it really boils down to, it's like the decision maker thing, right? What concerns should we be aware of from one of the decision makers? Same thing here, right? Do you foresee any obstacles that could prevent this deal from happening? I've asked this question a lot, and it's really important because they will tell you sometimes that if one of the responses I got before was, yeah, if we don't push this deal fast enough, the other departments might use up our budget and we won't be able to get this deal done this quarter. And they'll tell you that. So then it tells me that, okay, first of all, we got to make this deal move faster. This guy wants to do it fast too. How can I help this guy make this deal move faster so the other department doesn't take his budget because they share a company budget pool, right? So it's like things like that. Or my CFO might, you know, based on my experience, my CFO really doesn't like implementing technology. So it might be a challenge. But just ask it, right? You want to know that. For sure, for sure. All right, guys, we are done. Thank you for your time. Let's take any questions and then let's try jump off by 6 Pacific, 10 minutes, if anyone has any. By the way, put in the chat, did you guys find this foundation class helpful at all? It's like, okay, if you never had B2B experience, right? It's like you were, you know, just B2C or none at all. I hope like at least this gave you some kind of foundation at the very minimal level, right? Okay, good. Okay.
So before we start answering questions, I just want to put one little plug in here. If you guys have an interest in B2B and you've done some work, you've followed through, you've done your homework and got ready to do it, I mean, by all means, reach out to Felix or I by Facebook message or private message, whichever. Let us know you have an interest. We'll book an appointment with you to have a one-on-one conversation, and we'll see if it's going to be a good fit. You know, we do have a training program for our closers and testing that we run you through before we run the testing. We have a curriculum. We'll test you out. We'll see how you do with that curriculum. And if you do well, then we can help you get to the next phase and look at being a B2B closer. So just want to put that plug out there to just make sure that you're aware that it's available, and don't be afraid to reach out.
And here's what I would suggest.
Okay, go ahead, Felix. You say
Yes.
it first. I'm going to say something funny.
Yeah, the suggestions I have is to make it more effective, more efficient. Try to maybe cut off maybe the first 5 minutes of a B2B roleplay that you have. And when you reach out to Sean or I, give us that 5 minutes so that at least we can get a sense of where you're at, right? Then maybe we can give you some feedback before you come back if we've got a lot of applicants, because I think this would help us to give you feedback as well without setting up a time and all that as well. So think about that. Not mandatory, but I would suggest you do so that you can get the feedback that you need if you're not ready yet.
That's a great point too. I mean, like ideally, right, you have to be ready to be in a B2B. You got to be closer ready to be even put on the B2B division. So role play a lot, ask for feedback. Yeah, ask for feedback. I'm pretty sure I see right now, you guys still have the call feedback privilege. I'm pretty sure you guys can still upload a call, an IC, and ask a leader, HTM leader, to review a call, right? No? I don't see a lot of people doing it, but I'm at one time from, okay, got it. So but I'm pretty sure you guys have that. So use the privilege, right? Don't let your privileges go to waste. Do a call, get it to review. Felix is an HTM leader. He can review it. I can review it. Sean can review it. Like, just get someone to review it, right? Oh yeah, they maybe changed the SOP, so check with that a bit. Okay, perfect. So Q&A for us on the B2B foundation class. No? Anyone? Wow, you guys are either like shocked or astounded or all good or all perfect or going to be top B2B closers tomorrow. No questions. All right. Shang? Yeah.
I think Shang had his hand up.
Right. Yep, Shang?
Hi, Joe. So there one question about the question we go through for the past 20 minutes. So there one question about what concern will the decision maker have. So when we ask the personal form about other decision maker, what kind of concern they gonna have? What if we got that person they want to hide their car, they don't want to answer that directly. It's like, I don't know, I need to talk with them first. So what is your next move gonna look like? Are you gonna move forward and ask more question, or you just leave it there?
So if
What
I
is the best
understand,
practice based on your
so if I understand your question, you're saying if
Mhm.
the prospect doesn't want to answer this question, right? What do I do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say this. I
Uh,
say, I don't know. I need to talk with them first.
I will say from experience, I never had anyone not want to answer this question of like when I asked them, hey, Mr. Prospect, what concerns will your decision makers have? I never had anyone tell me I don't want to answer that. They either say none that I can think of right now, or I'm not really sure, or they will tell me. I would say the only time you would have someone not wanting to answer you is if you obviously like, bad tonality, right? You messed it up, or like you just, you make them feel like, yeah, you just make them feel like they want to answer it. So, but if they do say I don't know, or they don't want to, like they have nothing to tell you, I honestly would just move on. Like, I mean, personally, if I ask someone, hey, what concerns will your CFO have? And they're like, I don't know, none that I can think of. I don't press that too deep. I'll just I'll move on, because at the end of the day, like the person you're talking to could be new, right? He or she might also be his or her first time doing a deal like this. Like you said, they might have never talked to the CFO before. So sometimes, it's like you ask, but the worst that can happen is you just don't get anything. And maybe you just get that, but you move on. Doesn't mean you can't close the deal. You just go on, right? You continue moving forward.
And
That's, I would say.
and to add to that, if you get a situation where, maybe they say, well, I have to check with the decision makers first because I'm not sure what concerns they would have, you can very easily follow that up with, well, would it make sense to have a subsequent call with the decision makers and just make sure that we get all of their concerns addressed?
That's perfect. Another beautiful way to handle that. Yep. Does it help you, Shane?
Yes. Thank you, Joe. Sean, thank you. Yes, they're very helpful.
All right. Cool. Let's see. These questions are necessary in an AE call. So Patrick, the questions that you saw in this section, like this all critical, crucial B2B questions, these are both SDR, well, both, I would say both like appointment setting questions as well as AE questions. Like this one, like, I mean, you again, apply some common sense to it. Like you will know what you usually would ask during an AE call, what you wouldn't ask, right? In an SDR call, for example. But some of them you can ask both sides. Decision-making process, SDR could ask that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Felix.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. So I think it really depends on the sales process of different teams. It depends, right? So instead of asking whether this is an AE call questions, but more of when in the sales process do you ask these questions? Is it the SDR? Is it the AE? Or when in the process do you usually ask this question? Which I can't tell you because it depends on the team sometimes. But majority of that is, you would know along the time. You'll figure it out yourself. Sean.
And a lot of that too is that you should be in communication. There's communication always between your AEs and your SDRs on a team to know what questions the AEs want to know ahead of time. So a lot of these questions, while they may be AE questions, if there's an opportunity for you to ask them as an SDR and help prep that AE for the call, that's just that much further. It puts them ahead when they go to make the subsequent call.
Well said. That's the well said there. SDR and AE partnership, teamwork, right? If you can ask those questions first, get those answers, give it to your AE, because your AE could do some research. Seriously, like if you can find the decision maker first, I will give it to the AE. I'll go look at the CFO's profile, right? Do some research, find out more information. It always helps. Okay, fantastic. I think I know there's like Kumite happening next, so I don't want to hold you guys up here as well. Any questions you have, put it in the CIT main channel. Let Jason know. Jason can direct myself or Sean or Felix there, and we can answer your questions too. So thanks for your time, guys. Have a great rest of your day, evening, night. Enjoy the kumite. And I will also make sure that we get this recording back out to CIT in a bit. Awesome. Cool. Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Take care.